My name's Stephen Coleman, and for those of you who've just come into this roundtable discussion, this is a conference about citizenship. But I often think that there are two citizenships. There's textbook citizenship, where everything is democratic and it's working well and everyone has a voice, and we have lots of good debates and issues that we can get involved in. And then there's real world citizenship, where nobody's sure who they can trust. Certain voices are always louder than others, and equality is often corrupted by discrimination and neglect. Well, it's easy to feel insecure as a citizen in the real world, particularly as a young citizen, to feel underappreciated, to feel stuck in a rut, to feel broke, to feel powerless. Those are the feelings that we're going to be discussing in this roundtable session. And specifically, I hope that we can address three key questions. First of all, which voices get to be heard and which ones are routinely ignored? Secondly, what can young people do to make their voices powerful, to turn their words into democratic weapons? And thirdly, how can we develop practices of citizenship that emphasize creativity and pleasure and efficacy rather than mere duty and compliance? Now, around our table, we have 5 brilliant participants. We're really lucky to have them. Let me introduce them. Marvina Newton, who's the Executive Director of Black Allies Network. She also works on mental health and is instrumental in Black Lives Matters in the city of Leeds. We've got Safia Saeed, who's joined by Mohammed Abraham from Reach Up. We've got Robert Asson from the University of Wisconsin in Madison. And we've got Cassie Kill, who's a research fellow on the Speaking Citizens Project. Well, I'm going to ask you some questions to kick things off, but I ask of you all only one thing, and that is, don't hold back. Don't hold back. In the words of John Galbraith, what I urge you to do is offer us words that will comfort the afflicted and afflict the comfortable. So go for it. Okay, I'm going to kick off with Cassie. You've been working with groups of young people who are finding creative ways to express themselves democratically. Tell us who they are. Tell us what you've been finding.
Thanks, Stephen. So our research is ethnographic, and in common with most ethnographic research, our core concern is what's going on here. So in our ethnographic study of young people's communication as citizens outside of the classroom, we wanted to focus on what they thought was going on in their expression as citizens, as well as what we could observe. So we were interested in the meanings they brought and in the ways in which they valued their own abilities to express themselves. So we asked ourselves, how is their expression as citizens enabled and how is it constrained? So with our ethnographic approach, we've looked at found examples of youth citizenship in the real world, rather than examining cultivated Oracy interventions. We wanted to learn from young people's practices to inform the practice of Oracy and support future interventions. So me and my colleague Anna Liddell have been working with 4 groups of young people: trade unionists, a youth council, a youth justice funded DJing course, and young graffiti artists. And as you mentioned in your introduction, we found that some young people are using existing communication resources in the world around them, but also they're using creative and innovative new ways of communicating, which often challenge existing genres and assumptions in the field. So the trade unionists that Anna's been working with have sought out existing structures and avenues in the union to find solidarity with other young people and challenge oppressive practices in the workplace. One young person told Anna, "I'd had some problems at work when I was an apprentice, so I contacted the union there because I was being bullied at work. And I used to get things like being locked in the basement all day. And it was just because that was like the first job I'd ever had. I thought that was normal. It happens to every new person. It's just part of the routine. You've just got to put up with it. And then obviously I learned later that you don't have to put up with it. And I decided that if I thought that was okay, there's probably a lot of young people starting that think that's normal and it's okay. And for me, I just didn't want anyone to feel like that. And that's sort of why I wanted to go along to the regional meeting as well, to just sort of see other people's experiences. Other examples that we found in the research have shown how young people are really creative in their communication. So for instance, the young women graffiti artists I'm working with combine different stylistic and expressive aspects into their aesthetic practices as artists, which are not always validated or accepted by the dominant masculine subcultural norms in the graffiti scene. One young woman told me that she wouldn't even call her work graffiti because she didn't write a name. So she preferred the term street art as that felt more open and fluid. She told me about her experiences of sharing her work on social media, saying, I didn't want my age or gender to be a part of it really, but the natural assumption when I did well was that I must be a man. People would say, oh, are you chilling with that guy? And I was like, no, I am him. These young women are now working as a collective to produce a feminist mural challenging the intimidation that a lot of women feel on the streets and to give them a platform as a group of women artists. I'm really interested to see how this activity unfolds as an act of citizenship over the coming months. Across the project, we found that communication often isn't just verbal and it often isn't just literal or functional. It's expressive, emotional, embodied and affective. One young person I've worked with has learnt to DJ through the youth music scheme as part of a youth justice referral scheme. In this setting, the activity was really loud, which changed the kind of texture of this ethnographic research. It totally took the focus off the spoken communication because I couldn't often hear the small verbal exchanges that were going on. And this drew attention to other aspects of communication. These were often embodied. There was some really interesting movement, gesture, and the atmosphere and energy of the space became really noticeable. This young person has experienced a form of affective identity building through this creative practice. The feel of being in a real club space where the meetings happen, working with a real successful musician to support his learning has been really powerful. There's been a really particular quality to the listening and attunement in this setting that's been transformative for him. But nevertheless, there are barriers. Funding availability constrains the longevity of the relationships that he needs to really make a difference to the social inequality he experiences. The workers at the music project have told me that when young people stop attending, the same issues often come back, which led them into offending in the first place. And this question of barriers to young people getting listened to is really important in terms of understanding how their voices are activated as citizens. Of course, communication is a two-way street and not all voices are listened to equally. Young people have often been aware of this in the research we've been carrying out and often question the impact that this has had. One of the youth council members that Anna worked with reflected on this, saying, like, some people are naturally like louder and more extroverted than others. And sometimes they might not always have the right thing to say. And it's important to listen to the quiet voices as well. So we hope that we're able to do that in our project, to listen to the quiet voices, as that young person suggested. Across all 4 of our sites, there are important questions to be asked about what happens next, beyond these activities and beyond these moments. In the trade union, young people often age out of the young people's activities, and that transition can be really tricky. After the feminist mural project is complete, I wonder if things will really change and what happens to these artists if they don't feel like they've achieved their aims as citizens. Beyond the context of the youth council meetings, we're interested to find out whether young people's voices are listened to in other settings. And for the young person who's learnt to DJ, what happens now the funding to support him has ended, and is he able to maintain the changes he's made in his life? In all these questions, there are clearly some powerful material aspects involved in how far young people's voices are listened to and how far they're able to activate and sustain their agency as citizens. As the final stage of our study unfolds, we're really hopeful that the results of our research can inform the practice of oracy with these issues in mind. Thank you.
Thanks, Cassie. That's really interesting. And I heard 2 things there that I want to hang on to. And one of them is about just speaking and it's not just listening, but it's being listened to. And, you know, a lot of people tell us that we should all be very good at listening to other people, but other people are not always very good at listening to young people. And they're very often ignored. They're kind of tokenistically brought into the discussion. And the other thing you said, I think, is about what happens afterwards, continuing things. I don't know if any of the other panelists on the round table want to jump in at this point about any of those themes that were raised. Please do. Marvina.
I think, Cassandra, that really just sets the tone really for what we're here for, really challenging those inequality by empowering young people to have those voice and influence, irregardless how much influence they have. They all have voices. And when you then say silence is consent, being able to then teach a young person to empower them that when you see evil, when you see inequality, you do something. And I think that's such a great way to gather information and creativity. Throughout history, we know art and creativity has been a tool that's been used to really tell stories, irregardless of your culture. And I think that's where we are now. How come we don't put arts and creativity now in the center of a lot of things we do? Isn't that a way or a language that can be used that transcends, whether it's the civil rights movement or pride, whatever you see in history, art and creativity has been the heart of it. But if you notice, our education system removes that so much. So who do they want to tell the stories? Because if you constantly allow the oppressor write the narrative, the victim will become the perpetrator. So it's great to kind of see some of the work you're doing around that, and it's really, really sets a really positive tone.
Thanks. And I think that what's so interesting is you think that you know, citizenship is about creativity and art, and I think that. But if you were to stop most people in the street today and say, do you associate politics with creativity and art, they'd laugh in your face, because it's clearly not in the way that most of us come across it. And I want to turn to Robert in relation to this, because very often when, and Robert's done brilliant research and has written books particularly about what happens to a lot of disadvantaged and poorer people in society when they do try to speak up. And the issue is not, oh, how can we get them to speak up? But the issue is, how are they framed and diminished and even ridiculed when they try to speak up? Robert, talk to us about that.
Sure. It's a pleasure to be here with you all today and to participate in this important conversation. So I think that a lot of really important points have been raised so far, and I just want to underscore a couple of them. The first is to distinguish between different senses of citizen and citizenship, which we started the panel with. And so, Stephen, you had distinguished between the textbook and the real world citizen or citizenship. And I want to think about this as sort of in terms of traditional citizenship and a more expansive or participatory, what a number of us have already said. Marvina, you had mentioned this as well just a moment ago, Cassandra, in your comments, a kind of creative citizenship. And so the traditional sense of citizen and citizenship is sort of the person on the street view, as you suggested, Stephen, that if we ask someone what it means to be a citizen and what citizenship is, we're likely to get answers that are firmly grounded in institutions. The citizen is a status. It's a person who occupies a certain position. And the practice of citizenship is a very traditional practice. Well, in the United States, you can serve on juries, you vote, other kinds of things. And the challenge, I mean, there are many challenges, I think, with that traditional sense of citizenship. But when we talk about youth, there's a particular challenge in that young people occupy a kind of awkward relationship to that traditional notion of citizenship. So if, for example, we define citizenship through the vote, then in the United States, you have to be 18 to vote. What do we say to young people who are not yet 18? You're not a citizen, you're a citizen in training, you need to wait to be a citizen. And so what I've done in my work and what young people, I think, do brilliantly every day is reimagine citizenship, is to practice citizenship in different kinds of ways. And what that does, emphasizing creativity, emphasizing participation, is make citizen a fluid category, an identity that we can take and use to critique institutions. So in the United States, for example, when we think about issues of immigration and debates about migrants and their rights and their ability to participate in our society, by the traditional definition of citizen, an immigrant is not a citizen if they don't obtain a certain kind of legal status. But when immigrants come together and declare themselves parts of our society, members of our communities, active participants, what they're doing is performing, in adopting, engaging a set of practices that can help us rethink what we mean by inclusivity. And so I affirm that distinction because I think it's really important when we think about the relationship between people, especially young people, and institutions, because as we've talked about, institutions are often either unresponsive, particularly political institutions are often unresponsive to young people or sometimes outright dismissive. And in the United States, and I suspect that the UK and elsewhere share similar kinds of dynamics, many of the things that drive contemporary political institutions are things that are not available to young people, or certainly not in great numbers. Votes, money, lobbying influence, the kinds of levers that many political insiders view as necessary parts of the process of making change. And what we see instead are efforts by young people to work outside of institutions. Maybe this isn't an either or, inside and outside, but certainly we can see prominent examples of efforts by young people to work outside of institutions to try to pressure institutions to change. In the United States, sadly, we are distinguished by our regular levels of gun violence. We have mass shootings all the time, and sadly, too many of those happen in school situations. And one prominent example, an inspiring example to me of young people trying to resist institutions that dismiss them and discount them, is a movement that's known as March for Our Lives. And so a couple of years ago, this is sadly one of many incidents that happens in the United States. There was a school shooting in the state of Florida where 17 young people at a high school were murdered. And some of the very students from that high school who survived the shooting formed this group, March for Our Lives. And they held a march in our nation's capital in 2018 that had a kind of network of marches that were also held across the country. And estimates are that between 1 million and 1.2 million young people across the nation participated in these marches at various sites. And there were very prominent speeches, very prominent advocacy efforts where young people asserted their voices. And I just want to quote a hopeful moment in terms of thinking about this kind of pressure. I want to quote from one young woman, Emma Gonzalez, who gave a speech at the 2018 March. And here's just a portion of what she said. During her speech, she said, "Instead of worrying about our AP Government Chapter 16 test, we have to be studying in our notes to make sure that our arguments are based on politics and political history and are watertight. The students at this school," she was a survivor of that Florida shooting, "the students at this school have been having debates on guns for what seems like our entire lives. AP Gov had 3 debates this year. Some discussions on the topic even occurred while the shooting was taking place and students were hiding in closets. The people involved right now, those who were there, those posting and tweeting, are being listened to for what feels like the very first time. We are going to be the kids you read about in textbooks, not just because another statistic about a mass shooting in America, but because we are going to be the last mass shooting. We are going to change the law." Now, sadly, that was not the last mass shooting. And institutions are resistant to outside efforts at change. But what this represents, I think, is a necessary struggle, and at times a very creative struggle. It's hard, it's difficult, but it also involves elements of creativity and joy and solidarity. And it's an effort to counter the ways in which institutions frame youth as naive, as well-meaning but ignorant, as easily manipulated. In some cases, some media commentators accused the youth from this high school as paid political actors. And sadly, these kinds of frames dominate. Young people mean well, but they lack experience. Young people don't understand practical issues. Young people demand too much. And I think this is an example of young people creatively trying to push back and resist those frames and force institutional change. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. That's really well put. And I think we're going to come back somehow in our discussion to this inside-outside question, because, as you say, it's not an either-or, but it's a really important tension in our politics, and it seems somehow a lot more comfortable on the outside than on the inside of politics, from my experience. I'm going to come to Safia in a moment, but I want to take a chance here and shout me down if you don't want to answer it, Mohammed. But I want to just go to you a second, because I think you're the youngest person here. I'm sure I'm the oldest person here. And that is, you know, do you feel like a citizen? Maybe we've lost Mohammed for a second. Okay, we'll come back and we'll give this some thought. I leave that question with you. Oh, you're here. Okay.
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry.
Go for it. You know,
what's the question again, please?
Yeah. Do you feel like you're a citizen? I mean, does that word mean much to you? Does it inspire you? Does it give you a sort of sense of you've got something to do in the world? Or do you just think, what is all this about being a citizen? I'm not a citizen. How do you feel?
Well, citizen, when I hear citizen, obviously all I think about is like British citizen, or like basically saying like you're British, innit? So basically representing your country. That's what I think citizenship, being a citizen is. You understand?
Yeah.
I don't know if you can.
Do you feel yourself that you've got power as a citizen? I mean, like, if you want to change
No.
what the government is doing, how powerful are you?
Oh no, I can't really change that, because like there's so many stuff everyone tried to change, but we haven't even going close to changing.
Right.
We don't have like to get the government to even look at what we're trying to change. We have to do bare signatures and a petition, and sometimes the petition doesn't go through. So we don't really have enough power, basically.
Mohammed, you've just spoken as a citizen there. That's great. Let's keep because that is really going to be important to follow up with. Sophia, you've been working with the group Reach Up, with young people, trying to help them to become more confident. What works, Sophia? What doesn't work?
I think some things work, coming from the community up to a system, trying to change the system. I always say, if you want to change the system, then it's a top-down approach. But if you want to change the community, you have to rely on the community, which is a bottom work upwards. I think we're in what works is definitely a grassroots organizations being supported. So we all need each other. We need the professionalism, the funding, the governance, the paperwork, the support from top. But then at the same time, we've got the numbers, we've got the citizen, we've got the real stories. I always say the best services are the ones that you can't find on Google. You know, you will have to get out of your house, you have to get out of your office, you have to go to the streets, you have to go to the neighborhood, you have to listen to word of mouth and see what does work. Why is this shop a favorite place? Why is this, you know, why is everybody, so you'll see a very tiny restaurant or a takeaway so full, you'll see a very massive restaurant that's empty. So it's services, isn't it? But what as a youth, because they're not very small children and they're not very adult, we're really stuck in the middle. So that period is called like a changing period. So that's who we are. We are the ones that are turning the wheel. So, you know, we're trying to blend the bottom and the top together, and we're trying to change it and say, you know, we have our own platform. So what works is the listening, is the communication, is the fact that the community has got different languages, so there is no language barrier. The fact that, you know, what doesn't work is people parachuting in the communities. What doesn't work is the fact that you can drown them with so much money, yet no guidance or structure or support. What doesn't work is the fact that you're not empowering a lot of workforce. So I could tell you certain statistics that you developed or caused about how many boys I will have or young people I will have on mental health list, and I can tell you who, you know, who's going to end up in jail, and I can tell you who's going to, but you can't tell me in your statistic how many of these young people that are striving to go into education every day, that you will put them in a manager platform instead of just a worker. It's about, can they become managers? Can they become a diversity? Can you really give them that equality that you preach so much about, that you put in so much in your application forms to get that from central government? Are you really giving them that equality? Because you're preaching it. And the fact that you're not giving them the wings to fly. So I had a young girl who has been through a lot, who had got first job, professional job, to become helping you know, with exclusion kids. And she must have been the most perfect one out of the staff. The staff were very old. Not that there's no problem with old, I'm 50 myself, but in the age gap was really, really, really long. So they continue doing the same job. You know, when you have the same job for so long, it just autopilot you. Where this one came young, she said, I can connect them with them. You know, she was like 21. I can connect with them through music. I can connect with them through their language. I can connect with them through their, you know, postures, the way they talk, what they like. Just give me a chance. But the young people has accepted her. She understood what it means by mental health or a child being abused and why the reason they're being kicked out. She has lived that life. But she wasn't very accepted by the old generation staff. So they didn't make her feel welcome. They didn't make her feel that she can lead them into the next generation. At the end of the day, you are in a place where you want to better excluded kids for whatever reason they are. So patience is another one. So she wasn't supported. So she ended up having an emotional breakdown and she had to walk out away. So they've lost the key of where she could have sat on every table and help out. So again, discriminated young people. What doesn't work, and I'm always preaching about this, is the fact that you don't have us or the community on your walls. So you don't have a happy family, you know, or an integrated family posted around the city. You don't have in you know, you're reaching out to so much, you say, hard to reach communities, which we're not hard to reach, which we're everywhere, but but you won't have our pictures promoting you into the business places. You'll have somebody doing swimming and Olympics, very, very far-fetched from reality of Mohammed Ibrahim's reality right now. He see himself winning an Olympics. He can see himself being on there and encouraging other young people to join this swimming or to join this sort of sports facility. So it's about connection through image as well. You know, we should be on people's, the real people, real bodies, real, you know, different colors, families that look like me, you know, need to be at bus stops. So it's about normalizing, so we can say, and young people can say, can we? The most difficult one that I have, where when I sit down with one-to-one, we do aftercare sort of, you know, we do one-to-one, like, what you doing, how you doing, how's our youth club, is it okay, what is it that you need? The only question that they get stuck with is, how can I help you? They don't feel like they deserve it. They don't feel like what they could ask for, putting them in a very, very beautiful, you know, M&M store and say, what is it you want? But what they do know is what they don't want. They definitely understand what they don't want. But what they want is that guidance, mentoring. There's no point of pumping in. We get funding sometimes and it's overbearing because it's all repeated. Mental health funding. There's no, I can't pump in so much training on Mohammed when he's 17 and he's trying to look for a job. So can you give me a job for him? That's the straight talk that we are. So what works, again, sorry if I'm taking long, but what works again is being straight shooter, straight directly. You got to water down a lot of information. So when you're doing a leaflet professionally, I always say to them, just say it like it is, you know, boom, 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 the address, the time, they shall be there, the link, simple as that. Sometimes you do need that holding hand. So you say, they recognize you. If they recognize you, then you're the one who will bring the numbers for us, then use us as vehicles to bring the young people from A to B, you know, but at the same time, be generous with the transportation, understand that they need refreshments and food, and, you know, they need to have their own space for them to express what you want. Don't parachute in, you know, let us do our own job. Just all you need to do is support us and be that wall that we can lean on if we're ever. So when COVID-19 started, the young people weren't around that table. I was on 12 Zooms a day sometimes with public health, just so I can emphasize the point is, what is this COVID-19? Can you give me some information? I need to go and tell these kids. But nobody mentioned the young people at all. And I said, let them be a part of the solution instead of the problem. Stop, you know, stereotyping them and say, they don't have any mask on, they're the ones that are spreading. You never told them not to spread. You never told them to, well, so why don't we employ them as ambassadors for the COVID-19 or food parcels, and they can help out. They're quicker, they're faster, and they know exactly where laws are being broken in terms of the barbershops and, you know, what have you. So, well, let's emphasize that, and that did not happen. When it came to COVID-19 vaccine, we were the ambassadors for giving out the vaccine, but how can you give them, push the needle in your body when you have not given them the watered down COVID? You didn't answer their question. You didn't give them that debate. You didn't give them that freedom. So how do you do that? So again, it's like drowning their voices, but in a very polite way, and that is not fair. And you said, say everything like it is. It's just not fair. And then later on saying, oh, could you help us to get to the, no, you can't, no, we're not helping. So we did help at the end because it is our lives and it is our parents' life and it's something that we want to come. But at the same time, you know, all we did was answer a few questions to give them the information. What they did with their bodies is up to them. But like I said, always you need to, from the beginning, use them as solutions instead of you stereotyping them that they are problems. They are not the problem. You are the problem. You are not giving them enough information or empowering them or something for them to carry. Again, it's about dignity of the young people. We need to constantly have to watch them. We've got, and we always have to report back where they seek education. So if Mohammed's doing well, he knows that we connect with his head teacher and his teachers, and we say, look, he's doing really well at the community. I don't know what is going on in the college, but he's definitely not getting the support as you are. So again, we do advocate for a lot of the young people, but that's not going to be forever. Mohammed will have to speak for himself one day. And for that needs education and it needs a really good platform. Thank you.
That is extraordinarily well put. I want to put your picture up on my wall, never mind the bus stop. I just want to say to everyone, I'm going to come back with a question here. We've got people watching live. We're going to have even more people all over the country hearing this because it's going into schools and youth groups and everywhere. If you've got questions, the live people, prove that you're live. Put in a question, we'll answer it. And Sophia, one of the things you said was about pretending to be interested in what young people say. And I think that is so important, that very often what we do is we set up all these structures where we are asking them because it looks right to be asking them, but we do nothing with it. And we've made up our minds beforehand. And I just think that that is so dispiriting, and no one is going to learn anything from that except to walk away from being active. People learn from experience. I have a question. Let's come back to the questions a little bit later. I'm gonna come to a film. I want to show a film, and then Marvina's going to speak. Marvina alerted me to this film, and I just really, really like it. And the reason I like it is because it's not us talking about young people, it's young people talking about young people in a way that is so compelling.
What do you love about being black?
I love that lots of black people did great things. Black is beautiful. I've got a beautiful mum.
I like my hair, the culture, the food.
The culture, just everything about it. I just like being black.
What do you hate about the way the world treats you for being black?
It hurts me that people already have an idea of who I am before they've even spoken to me.
Everyone's mean to each other, even though we're the same.
They can take the culture and the music and stuff, but then they don't accept us as people.
People like judge you and say stuff. People like constantly like touch your hair.
I hate bullies in school.
I've just been treating them badly, even though we haven't really done anything wrong.
What I hate the most is that they see a colour. They don't really see the person that I am.
How does that make you feel?
Sad and depressed.
Upset.
Upset. Very annoyed.
Makes me feel angry and sad.
It makes me feel sad.
I feel like sometimes an outsider.
It's quite a crippling feeling because you're powerless within your own life because you can't control how people view you.
What would you like them to teach you more about black people in schools?
Whenever it's Black History Month, they always talk about the sports stars like Usain Bolt and all the footballers and all the basketballers. I wish that they would teach more about like the scientists and the more important people like the astronauts.
I just wish they would teach us more about the good stuff.
I wish they would teach me everything about black people in school.
I'd like them to teach us about the positive contributions you made to society and history. I want it to be treated on the same level as white history is treated.
What really happened in like slavery and stuff.
If you had a superpower, what would you create for black people?
It's a hard question because there's not many like black superpower like role models.
I would have the power to make people listen.
Telekinesis, super speed and super strength. If they want something that they wanted to give to someone, so I could use the super speed to get it.
Mentally being able to have strength because we go through a lot of stuff. Just being able to have a positive mindset. It may not be a superpower, but it's definitely something.
My superpower would be make police stop whenever they're about to kill a black person, they think and don't do it.
Stop people being racist and just be equal.
Controlling people's minds and be able to change people discriminating other people.
I would probably create educational places like schools, secondary schools, colleges, universities, and I'd also create a safe spot for like all of the black people who have nowhere to go.
What does mental health mean to you?
Mental health means when like people are feeling hurt mentally and they're just upset about something.
Quite a lot of black people, like, they get misdiagnosed with autism.
They will give somebody else 10 times more of a treatment than they would actually give a black person who has suffered from mental health issues because of maybe racist comments.
It's very important, but I understand why some people may not want to talk about it within the black community, because you've got our parents, right? And our parents have come from different backgrounds. To them, our problems and our issues may not be as big as what they may be going through. So, oh, I do this, you have a roof over your head, why would you ever have an issue or a problem? And I feel like that's really why it's hard.
I think discrimination can change how people think about themselves because they're different to all the others and they're just this dot in the middle of the whole white paper.
Thank you very much for sending that to me, Marvina. I've sent that to so many people since I saw it, and I also sent it to the head of Channel 4 News. So I hope that they are going to do something about this. I want to ask you, Marvina. You know, what I think we heard from those young people is we don't want to be judged. We want to have a voice. We want to be able to go out in the world and tell our own story. Why is it that they don't get that chance? And what is it that we can do to give them it?
I think it's very important for us to just be able to like just say the elephant in the room. We say we want to really work with young people, but really, do we ask them what they need, what they want, what that looks like? I wouldn't invite you to my house for dinner without knowing your dietary requirements. But for some reason, we do this all the time when it comes to young people or ethnic minority communities. We say we've got data from, again, a selected few people that we want to represent a whole generation. And that then causes the problem because we never find out exactly what is it that you like. Imagine now, let me take Robert as an example. I've invited you to my house for dinner. I haven't asked you your dietary requirements. And let's assume you're vegan. I've now made a full Nigerian spread, which has all the assorted meats, all these different things, and very, very spicy. And then you've come to my house and you've had some, and I'm like, wow, I've spent the whole day cooking, cleaning the house, doing all these things for you. And then you don't eat it. And you say, I'm really sorry, but I can't. I physically can't eat it. And I then start getting angry and saying, you know what, Roberts, you are hard to reach. You're so unappreciative. I don't understand how we're going to be able to support you, Robert. Like, I thought you said you hadn't eaten for days, and now I've created all this. That's an example of what we do to young people and ethnic minority communities always. We assume that one size fits all. A Caribbean experience is different from an African experience. A Nigerian experience is different from a Somali experience. That's the fact. So every child has an intersectionality of what makes their identity, sense of belonging, and sense of community. Whatever that looks like, I need to know that from that child. So I love using this model called Love, Hate, Create. I do this with everyone I work with. So if me and you are about to start a project, I like this idea of saying, identify what you love doing. I don't care about what you studied, but that thing, that little quirky thing, if I asked that you love doing, that hours would go by, you do. That's exactly how I would engage with a young person. I'll go straight into identify what you hate in society. I mean, like when you see it, you just be like, gosh, I really can't stand this. So in this case, it was mental health. And I go, imagine money and resources is not a problem. What would you do with using what you love to fix what you hate? And the young person said, you know what, I would like to create a movie to explain to people that we think about mental health and racial trauma actually affects me too. But obviously, I want to say it in our own way. I want to speak to children from 6 to 12. We as youth workers or teachers or whoever you are, should see yourself as working for the young people. That means they tell you what to do, and because we are allies to them, we act and accept that there's a problem, and we advocate for their inclusion. The L is for you to listen. I mean, listen actively to what these young people and the community say they need. The other L is for you to learn and unlearn your own unconscious bias, and we all have it, that affects us engaging with young people. And this is where we all mess up 99% of the time, is yielding. Yielding your privilege and turning it into power. So that means, how do I then make sure that I am amplifying the voice of these young people? So the first thing I did, the video is created. As you said, Steven, you send this video to so many people. I ended up sending it to some of the health professionals that I know, because I'm like, you said, we did. So we've now created this video by young people. How do I make that implement in my city? So that then was sent to the CCG, to NHS, to different people. And now, fortunately, I'm the CYP mental health inequality lead for children and young people. So I get to advocate, challenge system leaders on how policies need to be cultural humility needs to be observed in how we engage with supporting children and young people. We know, according to the data, 70% of Black men are more likely to be sectioned. We also know that Black boy joy is not something that is celebrated. We know that the Chinese and Gypsy and traveling community still have a high record of mental health inequalities, or present as problematic in the SE, which is the socio-emotional mental health reflections in schools. That means they always put in exclusion. A white boy might do something and everybody would understand. Yeah, he might have had a hard day. Yeah, it might be difficult. A Black boy does the same thing, or a Gypsy and traveling Romani boy who faces discrimination on living in a caravan or walking to school, or people assuming that he's about to steal from them constantly, but no one asks this and wonders why that child might feel stressed in the morning. It's so weird that we do not look at how important young people are able to do things. So now, removing my work head, there's a massive campaign going around the country called Kill the Bill, around the police and crime sentencing bill, around the nationality and borders bill, around the human right bill. But what people don't understand is that young people have played a vital part in this. The thing of using social media, using infographic, creating music, inviting politicians. Now is that ground, what Sophia was talking about, ground up approach on the government's about to take your right to protest and criminalize you if ever you wanted to fight against the system. And these young people are like, what? I get to go to prison for 10 years for protesting, like wildfire. Just like what you were talking about, Robert. This country has 46 cities now where children and young people and their communities are fighting back the government in a way that they even saw their first glimpse of win last week, where the Lord voted for 14 of the amendment to be removed. Young people are realizing that they have a voice and influence and power. But the thing is that, is it sustainable? The mental burnout for young activists, the only difference between me and you is I'm an activated human being. Everyone could be an activist. It's whether you take action on that inequality when you see it. And I really want to open and just leave it for any other discussion. So much more I can say, but when we use what we love to fix what we hate, because it's okay to use that word hate. If we don't hate oppression, you wouldn't have the civil rights movement. If we didn't hate what was happening to the LGBT community, you wouldn't have pride. We'll talk about pride later on, that being political and now being commercial now. But these are the kind of things we need to be able to remember the origins of rage and hate, and not criminalizing or demonizing young people for questioning and saying, but why do we do what we do?
That's great, Marvina. This is all leading on to a question. Before I ask the question, I want to say to Marvina, hold that dinner instantly. Robert doesn't want to eat it, but I'm coming. Now, this is a conference which has got a funny term in its title, Oracy. Oracy has been introduced into schools in recent years. In the UK at least. It's encouraging kids to stand at the front of classrooms and learn to make speeches and form arguments and all the rest of it. And I don't think anyone here is going to say it's an unworthy thing. If we can encourage young people to practice speaking in schools, that is a lot better than telling them to shut up. That's for sure. But I've got a sense from everything I've heard from all of you that there are lessons that Oracy teachers and the Oracy movement needs to learn about the real world, about, it's not just, we're not living in a democratic debating society. We're living in a world which is good, where you do get stopped by the police, where the prison system, the mental health system is unequal, so on and so forth. Let us be realistic about that. Therefore, because this is going to go into a number of schools where Oracy teachers are going to be listening to what you've got to say. And I'm going to start I'll start with you, Robert. Giving some kind of punchy answers each of you. What are these teachers who are teaching young people how to speak? What should they be doing that maybe they're not doing at the moment?
Well, I think we have to think about the relationship between individual practice, collective practice, and institutions. And in a classroom setting, that's a lot to take on. In fact, I just yesterday, one of the courses I'm teaching this semester is an Introduction to Argument course, where the purpose of the course is precisely that, to give students the skills and analytical abilities to create arguments to support the kinds of positions they favor. And afterwards, one of the students came up to me and said, and I tied it very directly, I should say, to the practice of democratic citizenship, quoted John Dewey, etc. And afterwards, one of the students came up to me and said, Professor Asen, this seems very aspirational, but I wonder how we practice it, because not everyone wants to be engaged about public issues. Not everyone cares to listen to someone who disagrees with them. So what do we do with that? And what I said to that student is that, well, we have to think about this in a couple of ways, but at the same time, that each of us as individuals can learn these skills, can try to practice these skills. But there certainly is an ethics to speaking. There's an ethics to engagement that is a relational ethics, that if I respect someone else's humanity and someone else's agency, then they should respect mine in turn. And if someone is not going to respect me as a person and is not going to respect my agency, then I have no obligation to engage them. I have no obligation to prepare what I believe to be a cogent argument. There are other ways to make change. And so I think that speaking in this sense of constructing arguments and compiling evidence is part of a repertoire of practices that are available to make change depending on the institutional and political context. And so I think what we can do is to try to further circulate this model. Goodness knows we need more of it, even as we say to students, look, we can find lots of examples where elected officials, people online and social media completely disregard this and have no interest in this. So let's look for opportunities to engage in this kind of speaking. Let's recognize the limitations, and let's think about this not as a sole skill or a primary skill of citizenship, but as one of a number of different practices that we can use depending on the context we find ourselves in.
Right. Sophia, what should the people who are doing this oracy in schools, what should we tell them?
The staff, you mean?
Yeah. What should they teach you?
So I'm a local governor of I'm the chair governor of one of the secondary school, local school, and I always say to them that let the teachers teach. Okay, so they've got enough pressure on that. when it comes to different social skills and different information that is out there, let the outside services come and represent that. So, so you go from in outwards. So use the local community areas or the services that's around the area, because when they're talking, they can understand exactly, because every area is completely different and different. I can't preach in different areas of Sheffield. I have no connection to it. Neither I know the issues are there. So you work from in outwards. So you have your core staff, and then you have your you have your experienced individuals, or maybe the services of the community groups that's around you that can come in and do some stalls and everything like that. And then you've got the outside and organizational, funded organization or private organization sector. Then you've got the officials or the authorities that's out there. So you go from in out. So that way the child does not feel, oh, he's being addressed by a stranger straight away. To say, oh, I see you, because the people that you want your young people to be influenced through are the local people first. So so the local school's got a problem with some knife crime or something like that. I will choose out of all of the young people that are the ones that live in the area, so they can, the kids that they preach to is the same kids that they'll see at the bus stop, they'll see at the barbershop, they'll see at the snooker place, and say, look, I'm watching you, because we don't have alive youth clubs right now. So this is the best we could do, an extended family then they become. In terms of the schools, we have to think differently. Some schools have got really, really big, massive guard up. And what you don't understand is if you don't not open those gates, whatever happens in that community will come to your gates, whether you like it or not. So for you to say, I want to have a leadership program, for you to say that I want to influence young people, I want to reintroduce maybe a drama or arts or things that is very, very therapeutic. Yeah. Again, stereotyping, they think every black kid can play basketball, so they throw a ball at him. They think every single person with glasses on it, oh, this must be a bookworm. They really, really stereotype these young people as well. If they're loud, then they are troublemakers. If there's 6 of them, then there's, oh my God, they're gonna, oh, I better get hold of my purse. And I've been taking the young people to different institution, and when I walk in with 27 young men, and you could just see the crowd going on this side, so it's because the value, it's like we shouldn't. So I'm just always at the edge and always watching the weird looks. Back to the school, it's just that communications, do not assume that you can grab every single parent's attention or every young person's attention through websites. Sometimes a personal interaction will be great. Hot chocolate with the local head teacher every Friday afternoon to go and ask her something is very important, and not to give the parents a big massive hoo-ha in terms of this is what your son did. This, instead of saying, look, we're having a communication problem, let's 3 of us work and support this behavior to take it back home. And I think it's a lot of unity, and there's a lot of pressure, and should be a lot of responsibility on the child and on the parents as well. So I think it's a very, very joint effort that we need to have, but I think everybody should have its own pathway first, and keeping the staff safe, keeping the child safe, and keeping the parents to be on guard. That's the most important thing. It takes a village to bring that child up, and I think as long as we understand that we are the village and we're not, we can't speak for that child constantly, it'll be fantastic and great. But we do need a productive children, and we need to have a timeline is another thing for young people. While we're going around writing policies and ideas, and we're going to be talking and discussing, there's a couple of young kids are being either lured into really bad stuff or being killed. So time is in essence. I think constantly kids move fast, social media moves really, really quick. We just need to what's next, what new page, TikTok comes now, TikTok will be out, something else. So while we need small wins for us to have a long-term solutions. Thank you.
Time is running out. I've got a feeling that what Sophia said we were all nodding along with, so I don't know that we're going to need to add to it, but I know that we could carry on this conversation for hours, and we should. It's a big conversation. It is about making sure that we claim what society we want, and that we allow young people not to just inherit something bad, but create something good. And I think what Marvina was saying about love, hate, and create is so important. Marvina, jump in.
No, it's just really important, mostly with this oracy thing. Not every child has that gift to stand out and talk. So this is why that love, hate, create is going to be important. They might want to use a storyboard. They might find this easy for them to use rap about it. I've seen people create more great bars and talking about politics that actually goes viral than you can even imagine them standing talking to you and me. And that would actually, how do we nourish and support young people to sit in their strength? So it's almost saying no dream is too big or too small. No idea you give sounds stupid. Encourage that idea in any form and nurture that. And what Sophia said is so spot on. How do we keep creating this gatekeeper syndrome between the community and the education establishment? Let's explain. We've got 10,000 hours of expertise in dealing with what you say is hard to reach. We bring results and resilience in places that you cannot even fathom because you don't even know it's happening. Some of these conversations are happening in the barbershop. I'm in the process of writing a proposal of looking at teaching barbers and teaching hairdressers and nail technicians to do mental health and well-being therapy and signpost. That's because we don't have no youth centers no more. We don't have any other places to even engage children and young people. If that means I need to train shopkeepers to notice that a child walks in and the head's a little bit low, they're not coming with their normal spunky behavior, I'm then saying, okay, what's up, bro? Is everything okay? If I'm even doing your braids, I've noticed you've not done your hair for a while, you know, is everything all right? What's going on? Like, normally you're here every 6 weeks. But now, there you can then identify things and then imagine looking at new ways of engaging a people's assembly. People's assemblies work. I have the thing around citizenship that at the moment, we are second-class citizens in the UK. We're reminded by that in a lot of things we do by seeing how we come second to none. So now my child watching me already is feeling that, mentally feeling like, am I meant to be in certain spaces? Imagine me telling my child the sky is the limit. Every time they go, they slap them down. That's the reality of what educational establishments, youth centers, and services do. And if you are a teacher, find out who in your local community is the real model. I mean that positive deviance, because I know you are easy to remember who the negative deviants are. But real models are not role models because they're real to the people and the young people they see. There are things that you need to then start bringing and building those people to see how they change the narrative, but really encourage your young people that standing up to talk is not everybody's gift. We should stop trying to conform and create everybody the same. And maybe someone might be great at making films, or might never want to ever come in front of the camera. Create some animation. They can even use gaming. Gaming is a therapeutic tool to have hard, challenging conversations. I remember using Call of Duty to talk about migrants and refugees and how the other is always feared. And this is playing Call of Duty or Grand Theft Auto on the concerns on the demoralization of young girls and their bodies. Think outside the box. And if you can't do that in schools, there are other people that can do it. Put your money where your mouth is and stop asking people to do things from ethnic minority communities without putting the resources in, because it's very important for you to do that. That was my rant done. Hopefully that helps someone.
Thank you, Marvina. Listen, I said to you, tell it like it is. We ended with an exclamation mark, not a question mark. And that's the way it should be. I'm going to be thinking about this for hours afterwards. I hope that all of the people who are watching this will realize that there's a different position for them to think about. There's a perspective here which maybe could really broaden things. And incidentally, I think what Sophia said and Marvina said about bringing people in from the community and not expecting teachers to do it all is so incredibly important, because talk is social. It is not something that is monopolized by a small group of educated people. This has been a real privilege to chair this event. I look forward to further discussions. Thank you all for participating, and thank you for listening in. Thanks very much.